I am Danielle Mercer, 31 years old. I'm a customer support supervisor in Charlotte, North Carolina, and 3 years ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I trusted my sister. The last normal moment I remember was a Tuesday. I was microwaving leftover pasta in the break room, watching the seconds blink down on the greasy little screen when my phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number, local area code. I almost didn't answer, figured it was spam or a robocall, but something in my gut tugged. Hello, Ms. Mercer, the woman's voice was calm, crisp. This is Karen from Chase Fraud Protection Services. Do you have a moment to verify a recent purchase on your account? I rolled my eyes instinctively, already gearing up to hang up. I haven't made any unusual purchases. This charge was made yesterday, $32,000 to BMW of North Charlotte. I blinked. The microwave beeped, startling me. The smell of stale marinara clung to the air. I'm sorry, what? I asked. Karen repeated the number. 32,000, down payment for a BMW 7 Series, registered in your name. My mouth went dry. That's a mistake. There's a full loan attached. The total financing is $190,000. The dealer provided a copy of the driver's license and signature at the time of the agreement. We just need to confirm that this was you before proceeding with any further action. It felt like the room had tilted. I stepped into the hallway, heart pounding, trying to remember if maybe I'd cosigned for someone. No, that wasn't possible. I would never. Can you send me the documents? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Of course, she replied. They're on the way to your email now. Please check and confirm immediately. I hung up and pulled out my phone. There they were, PDF scans. My name, my address, my social security number. My driver's license. And a signature at the bottom that looked close enough. But the name in the buyer section. Danielle Mercer. I stared at it for what felt like hours. No, it couldn't be. I called the dealership. They confirmed everything. Security footage, yes, they had it. I asked them to send it. They hesitated, then finally agreed. When the video arrived, I sat at my desk, hand trembling, and pressed play. There she was. My sister. Wearing a white blouse and dark sunglasses, flipping her hair as she smiled and signed the forms. I covered my mouth. A sound escaped, something between a gasp and a sob. My coworker Melanie passed by, gave me a look. You okay? I nodded too quickly. Yeah, just allergies. That night I drove straight to her place. No call, no warning. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tight my fingers ached. My mind raced. Maybe she had a reason. Maybe this was some insane mix-up. But deep down I already knew. Her black BMW was parked out front, sleek, shiny, mocking me. I got out slowly, the air sticky with humidity. Cicadas buzzed in the trees. I walked up the steps, my stomach twisting. She opened the door, phone in hand, smiling until she saw my face. Her smile dropped. Danny. I pushed past her, walked straight into the living room. What's going on? She asked, voice sharp. I turned to her, holding up my phone. You want to explain this? She squinted at the screen, then crossed her arms. Okay, I was going to tell you. You took out a $190,000 loan in my name. Her jaw clenched. I needed help, okay? My credit's crap. You've got great credit. I figured I'd pay it off quickly and no one would notice. You forged my ID. I made a copy. You left it in Mom's desk when we were cleaning out the house. My legs nearly gave out. I sat on the edge of her couch, hands shaking. You used Dad's death to steal from me. Her voice rose. Don't be dramatic. You're acting like I robbed a bank. You might as well have. She scoffed. You always do this. Act like you're above everyone else, like you've got your life together and the rest of us are just struggling losers. I never said that, but I worked for what I have. You took it. We stared at each other, strangers now. I'm leaving, I said, standing slowly, and I'm not going to let this go. Her arms dropped. Wait, Danny. But I walked out. Drove home in silence. That night I didn't sleep. I filed reports, printed everything, called my bank, froze my accounts. The next morning I woke up to 5 missed calls from my parents, 2 texts from Tessa, 1 from Mom. She's getting married soon, don't ruin this for her. Be the bigger person, Danielle. I stared at that message, heart sinking. They didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't care about the loan. They just wanted the picture-perfect wedding. But they were about to learn something important. I wasn't the bigger person. I was the one cleaning up the mess. And this time, I wasn't going to stay quiet. They say revenge doesn't fix anything. Maybe, but justice. Justice holds weight. After that night at Tessa's apartment, I stopped looking at her as my sister. She wasn't family anymore. She was a liability wearing my name like a party dress, sparkling, convenient, borrowed. I made a list, actual pen and paper, every charge on my credit report, every fraudulent detail, the bank accounts, the dealership info, loan paperwork, her forged signature. I didn't cry, I calculated. I wasn't angry, I was focused. That version of me, the one who gave Tessa the benefit of the doubt, who covered for her growing up, who paid her phone bill that entire year she forgot, she was gone. And in her place stood a woman with no space left for betrayal. That's when I found Darren. A friend of a friend, quiet voice, leather jacket, gray hair, looked like he could repo your dreams and be home by dinner. When I told him what happened, he didn't blink, he just nodded, got the VIN. I did. He smirked, then let's ruin someone's ribbon cutting. It was an odd feeling laughing at that, but I did, short, breathy, a release valve I didn't know I needed. Tessa's wedding was in 6 weeks. She booked this Pinterest-perfect vineyard just outside Asheville, everything cream and gold, champagne fountains, antique glassware, live cello music. I knew the venue, knew the time, knew she'd want to park the BMW front and center like it was part of her bridal ensemble. And that's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to yell, I wasn't going to throw a drink or crash her vows. No. I was going to take back what was mine. And I was going to do it on the day she thought she'd finally won. The morning of her wedding was warm, with a hint of rain in the air, like the world was holding its breath. I wore a soft blush dress, not black. I didn't want to look like vengeance. I wanted to look like a ghost. Darren picked me up in his flatbed tow truck, no logos, just chrome edges and efficiency. We parked down the hill from the venue, just far enough to not be seen but close enough to watch. From there, everything unfolded like theater. Guests arrived in clusters, pastel dresses, khakis, wide-brim hats, laughter, hugs, the clink of champagne glasses. I spotted Alec the groom. He looked nervous, like a man who'd been told not to ask questions. And then there she was. Tessa. Descending from the barn steps in a white, lace-draped gown, hair swept into soft curls, laughing with bridesmaids, bouquet clutched in her hands. She looked radiant. But all I saw was a lyre playing house. The BMW sat polished at the front of the barn, hood gleaming, a white satin ribbon across the grille, probably told everyone it was a gift from Alec. It was mine, my debt, my destroyed credit score, my sleepless nights. Darren started the engine, quiet, smooth. I gave him a single nod. And just like that, he rolled forward. At first, no one noticed. But when the truck eased into view, slow, deliberate heads began to turn. People squinted, stepped aside, confused murmurs rose. Darren got out and walked to the BMW, unlocking the clamps, calm, like he was picking up dry cleaning. Then came the shouting. What's going on? Is this part of the wedding? Why is there a tow truck here? And then her voice shrill, furious. Excuse me. Tessa stormed down the steps, veil trailing, heels stabbing the gravel. What are you doing? You can't just take that. Darren handed her a stack of documents. Repossession order, registered to Danielle Mercer. Her face turned bloodless. She turned and saw me. I stepped out of the passenger seat, calm, hands by my sides. Danny, she whispered, you did this. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't cry. That car was never yours, I said. You just thought I wouldn't take it back. Alec approached, brows furrowed. Tessa, what's he talking about? She panicked, it's a mix-up, it's Danny, please, not today, not my wedding. I stepped closer, just enough for her to hear me. You stole $190,000 from me, forged my name, you smiled about it, and now I'm smiling back. She blinked hard. You're ruining everything. No, I said, you did that. I'm just taking the trash out. Gasps, phones, guests standing still, stunned, unsure whether to intervene or record. Alec looked at her, then at the documents. He didn't say a word, just turned and walked away. And just like that, it was done. Darren secured the car, got back in the truck. I followed. As we drove off, I looked in the side mirror. Tessa stood frozen, white gown against a gravel road, her illusion finally unraveling. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat. I just breathed. Deeply. For the first time in months. It wasn't revenge. It was relief. And sometimes that's better. We didn't talk on the way home. Darren just drove, sunglasses on, the faint hum of country radio playing low beneath the clink of the BMW's wheels against the trailer. I watched the trees blur by, a growing ache behind my eyes. By the time he dropped me off at my apartment, the sun had dipped low enough to cast long blue shadows across the parking lot. He leaned out the window before driving off. You did the right thing, Danielle, he said simply. I nodded but didn't answer. Because here's the truth, doing the right thing doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it just feels heavy. I took the stairs to my second-floor unit one slow step at a time. My phone vibrated 3 times before I even reached the door. I didn't have to look to know who it was. I locked myself inside, kicked off my shoes, collapsed onto the couch. I stared at the blank TV screen, the dark reflection of my own face looking back at me, eyes puffy, mouth slack, heart somewhere else. Then the first voicemail came through, my mother. Her voice was sharp, controlled, the kind of tone she only used when she was furious but didn't want to look like she was losing control. Danielle, I don't even know what to say. You humiliated your sister on her wedding day, in front of family, friends, everyone. That was disgusting. Disgusting. Not what Tessa did, not the months of identity theft, of destroyed credit, of police reports and court filings. What I did. I deleted the voicemail. Another one came through minutes later, my dad this time. We raised you better than this. You don't air family matters in public. You could have waited, had some class, but instead you chose to make a spectacle for what? A car. I wanted to scream, a car. It wasn't about a car, it was about dignity. It was about me. But they didn't want to hear that. They never did. Later that night, I got a text from Tessa, just 5 words. You got what you wanted. I stared at it for a long time, then turned my phone off. I didn't go to work the next day. I called out sick and spent the morning cleaning my apartment, vacuuming, scrubbing, organizing, anything to avoid the spiral. But grief has a way of finding you in the stillness. By noon, I sat on the kitchen floor, surrounded by unopened mail and half-folded laundry, sobbing into my knees like a child. Not because I regretted what I did, but because the people I thought would protect me, the people who taught me to value truth, responsibility, and self-respect, had sided with my sister. The same sister who'd committed a felony. And I wasn't surprised. That's what hurt the most. Tessa had always been the golden one, the baby, the excuse maker. I was the fixer, the peacemaker, the adult in the room. So when I finally chose myself, really chose myself, they didn't know what to do with me. They turned their backs. That weekend, my dad called again. I let it go to voicemail. He said Tessa had gone to stay with friends, that Alec hadn't moved in with her, that things were messy, and that I should call to clear the air. Clear the air. Like this was a misunderstanding. Like I hadn't spent months untangling the financial wreckage she left behind. I didn't call him back. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a new document. Everything she took. I listed it all. The stolen ID, the forged loan, the credit damage. But also the emotional cost. The panic attacks. The insomnia. The $200 I'd spent on a therapist just to stop blaming myself. The way my hands still trembled when I saw her name. The way I no longer trusted my own judgment. I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for me. Because trauma needs a witness. And if no one else was going to acknowledge what happened, I would. The following Tuesday, I went back to work. Melanie hugged me tight. We all saw the video, she whispered. you're a legend. I flinched, it wasn't about that. I know, she said gently, but you did what most people don't, you stood up. Still, I felt raw, vulnerable. Like I'd stripped off armor and hadn't grown new skin yet. The office noise buzzed around me, keyboards clicking, phones ringing. And yet I felt still. Not empty. Just quiet. I didn't check my phone that week. I deleted all my social apps, blocked my mom, moved my dad's number to voicemail. I didn't want apologies, I didn't want explanations. I wanted distance. Space to breathe. To begin again. And in that space, I did something radical. I chose peace. Not just with the past, but with myself. Because standing up to someone you love feels like burning down your own house. But sometimes, that house was never safe to begin with. It was a Tuesday when she called. 3 months after the wedding. 3 months since I last saw her standing in that gravel lot, veil crooked, voice cracking. 3 months since I blocked her number and told myself I was done. But the thing about sisters, even broken ones, is that their voice still echoes somewhere in your bones. The call came during my lunch break. I had just heated up leftover curry and was standing in the office kitchen, sipping from a chipped mug that said Mondays are for survivors, when my phone lit up. Unknown number. I should have ignored it, but my fingers moved anyway. Hello. A pause, then Danny. My breath caught. Tessa, I said carefully, like the word itself might shatter something. Can we talk? Silence stretched between us, like a drawbridge waiting to be lowered. I swallowed, you have 5 minutes. She let out a shaky breath. I know I messed up, I know it's been months, but I've been thinking about what you said, about what I did, and you were right about everything. I didn't reply, I just walked out of the kitchen and down the hall, phone pressed tight to my ear. I didn't want to admit it, she continued. At first I kept telling myself you overreacted, that it wasn't that bad, but now I see it, I do. Her voice cracked a little. I lost Alec, he walked out, my job cut my hours, even mom won't answer my calls anymore. I've been staying with a friend, he's sleeping on a couch. And I keep thinking, what if I hadn't done it? What if I just asked you for help instead of stealing from you? I stopped at the end of the hallway and leaned against the wall. You didn't trust me enough to ask, I said quietly. I know, she whispered. And I hate that I became someone you couldn't trust either. I hate what I did. And I'm sorry, Danny, not the fake kind of sorry, I mean it. I closed my eyes, I didn't want to cry, I didn't want to feel anything at all. I'm not ready to forgive you, I said, and it surprised me how steady I sounded. I understand, she said quickly. I wouldn't either, but I'm trying, I really am. There was a pause, then a rustling sound. I mailed you something, a repayment plan. I got a second job nights at a diner. It's not much, but I'm sending what I can every month. I don't expect you to respond. I just wanted you to know. My throat tightened, not because it changed everything, but because for once she was finally doing something instead of just saying it. Okay, I said, thanks. That was all I gave her. And that's all she took. I'll let you go, she said softly, and I hope you're doing okay, I really do. I hung up without saying goodbye. I slid my phone into my pocket and stood there, feeling the aftershock. Not rage, not sadness. Just quiet. And under that quiet, maybe something like release. The envelope came 2 days later, handwritten, no return address. Inside was a short note, a printed spreadsheet of payments she planned to send monthly, and the first check, $300. It wasn't much, not compared to what she took. But it was real. And that made all the difference. I deposited the check, not out of optimism, just out of practicality. I still had bills to cover, therapy appointments to pay for, credit scores to rebuild. I didn't reply, I didn't text her, I didn't even tell anyone. Some part of me didn't want to break the silence just yet. It had become a kind of sanctuary, a quiet space between who we were and whatever came next. That weekend, I walked to the bookstore near my house. The kind with crooked wooden shelves and a sleepy cat named Pickles who always sat on the staff picks table like he owned the place. I bought a used copy of Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed. I read the first few pages in the corner chair by the window, and one sentence hit me so hard I had to put the book down. Forgiveness doesn't just sit there like a pretty boy in a bar. Forgiveness is the old fat guy you have to haul up a hill. Yeah, that felt about right. Over the next few weeks, the checks kept coming, small, consistent, unaccompanied by notes. Each time I opened one, I'd feel the faintest flicker of something. Not forgiveness, not even healing, just the knowledge that maybe she was actually trying this time. I didn't let it soften me, not right away. But I also didn't let it harden me again. One day I sat down and tried to write her a letter, just something short, not dramatic, just honest. I got as far as, "Tessa, I got the check." Then I stared at the blank space beneath it for 20 minutes before deleting it entirely. I wasn't ready to open that door again. But maybe I'd cracked a window. On a Thursday evening, I met Melanie for drinks. We hadn't caught up since the wedding drama, and I needed a distraction. I heard she reached out, Melanie said over her mojito. "How that going?" I shrugged. "She's sending checks." "Is that enough?" "No," I said, "but it's something." She raised her glass, to small somethings then. I clinked my glass against hers, to not falling apart. That night, as I walked home under the yellow glow of street lamps, I found myself thinking about the difference between apology and accountability. Tessa had apologized before. But this time, she was doing the thing she never had before. She was showing up. Quietly, imperfectly, but consistently. And that, I realized, might be the beginning of something. Not reconciliation, but responsibility. And maybe that's what real healing starts with. Not the words, but the work. The funny thing about healing, you don't feel it happening. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or music swelling in the background. It arrives in the small decisions you make when no one's watching, like finally sleeping through the night without waking up from a financial anxiety dream. Or walking past a black BMW in a parking lot and not immediately freezing in place. It's subtle, like the quiet creak of your own life stitching itself back together. A month had passed since Tessa sent that first check, then a second, then a third. I didn't reply to any of them. I didn't say thank you, but I also didn't return them. They weren't gifts. They were rent payments on a life she'd borrowed and broken. Meanwhile, I was trying to rebuild something entirely mine. The apartment I'd been in for 2 years suddenly felt too full, not with stuff, but with ghosts. Every wall held memories of the days I spent drowning in paperwork and dread. Every cabinet felt like it still echoed with the silence of betrayal. So I started looking. And that's how I found the little townhouse on the edge of town. A compact, single-story unit with squeaky wood floors, mismatched cabinet handles, and a backyard just big enough to plant something in. It wasn't love at first sight, it was better than that, it was relief. It felt quiet, it felt unclaimed. It felt like no one had ever cried in its corners. The rent was manageable, the lease was simple. The landlord was a retired woman named Darlene who wore oversized glasses and smelled like vanilla and dryer sheets. She gave me a small smile and said, "This place needs someone gentle. You look like you've earned that kind of peace." I signed the lease that day. I didn't tell anyone I was moving. I packed up over a weekend, loading boxes into my backseat one at a time. No movers, no friends, just me, a podcast playing in the background, and the satisfaction of lifting my life in manageable pieces. There was something poetic about it, how I carried every box myself, the same way I'd carried every consequence of Tessa's choices. But this time I was moving forward. Not away from something. Towards something. The first night in the townhouse was quiet. I didn't even unpack. I just laid on the floor in the empty living room with a bottle of sparkling water, staring at the ceiling fan spinning above me. No distractions. No TV. No drama. Just me and a space I chose. I felt something loosen in my chest, not a full release but something close, something that whispered, "You made it through." The next morning I opened every window, let the light pour in. The air smelled like damp soil and possibility. I brewed coffee and sipped it on the tiny back porch while birds picked at the earth beneath the fence. Later that afternoon, I went to the garden center and bought a few herbs: basil, rosemary, thyme. I didn't know much about planting, but something about tending to a living thing felt like the right medicine. I knelt in the dirt and pressed the roots in gently, like I was tucking them in for bed. As I worked, a woman leaned over the shared fence. Late 50s, short gray curls, bright eyes. "New neighbor?" she asked. I looked up and smiled. "Yeah, just moved in." "I'm Paula, I'm the cat lady, don't judge me." "I'm Danielle, and I used to be the emotionally repressed one, so fair trade." She laughed. "Well, Danielle, let me know if you need anything. I make killer lemonade and terrible advice." That evening, I sat on the back steps, dirt still on my hands, sipping her lemonade from a jelly jar. She didn't ask about my past. She didn't offer pity. She just told me about her garden, her late husband, and how she once bleached her hair orange by accident. It felt easy, like breathing with both lungs again. The days slipped into a new rhythm. I decorated the walls slowly, second-hand art, framed quotes I didn't find cheesy anymore. I put up fairy lights in the kitchen, bought a lavender candle that made the whole place feel like a warm bath. And slowly, the townhouse stopped feeling like a stranger. It started feeling like mine. I no longer stared at the mailbox with dread. I didn't check for Tessa's name in every unknown number that called. I stopped counting the checks she sent. I still cashed them, but they no longer defined my day. I was building a life that didn't orbit her anymore. And that was the real gift. One afternoon, as I watered the garden, I found myself smiling for no reason, just smiling. It wasn't about anything in particular. It was about everything. The quiet, the plants, the unshakable fact that I had survived a betrayal that might have broken a weaker version of me. It was about the strength that had bloomed in the aftermath. The kind of strength you don't see in the mirror, but you feel in your bones when someone tries to shake you and you stay rooted. Weeks later, Paula knocked on my door holding a fluffy gray kitten. "She's been sneaking over to your porch every night," she said. "I think she likes your basil." I took the kitten in my arms. She was warm and shaky with big green eyes and tiny paws. I looked down at her. "What do you think, Olive?" The kitten sneezed. "Well," I said, "I guess that's a yes." And just like that, I wasn't alone anymore. I didn't tell Tessa. Not because I was hiding joy, but because she no longer needed to know it. She had taken enough from me. She didn't get to have this part too. This garden, this cat, this life, they were mine. Healing didn't come in a wave. It came in layers. In the smell of rosemary in the sun. In the softness of a kitten's fur against my cheek. In Paula's laugh through the fence. In a home that didn't ask me to be anything except safe. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if forgiveness would ever feel right. But I knew this. I was no longer surviving for peace. I was living in it. And that finally felt enough. Thanksgiving came and went quietly. No turkey, no family photos. Just me, Olive, and a frozen lasagna that took 90 minutes to heat and 6 to eat. I spent the day organizing books, vacuuming under furniture, lighting candles for ambience I didn't need but wanted anyway. Paula dropped off a container of mashed sweet potatoes and cranberry sauce with a sticky note. "Your family now, no escaping it." I smiled, warmed by her presence more than her food, though the sweet potatoes were suspiciously good. But the next morning, something shifted. It started with a dream, the kind that clings like fog even after you wake. In it, Tessa and I were young, maybe 7 and 10, running barefoot through our childhood backyard, making up songs about monsters in the sprinkler, laughing. And then suddenly, in the dream, she was older, wedding dress, angry, and I was the one walking away with the car keys in my hand. I woke up with a strange tightness in my chest. Not guilt. Not regret. Just weight. So I did something I hadn't done in months. I pulled out a notepad and began to write her a letter. Not to send, just to say, "Dear Tessa, you braided my hair for my 8th grade dance. You cried when I left for college. You once punched a guy for calling me boring and I loved you for it. I still remember your favorite cereal, your go-to karaoke song, and the way you used to fall asleep on the couch and insist you were just resting your eyes. I remember the softness before the sharpness. But I also remember the lies, the forged documents, the voicemail from the bank that made my hands go cold. I remember how you smiled through it, like you didn't just blow up my credit but rewrote the part of me that believed you'd never do that. That betrayal, it wasn't just financial, it was personal, surgical, and you knew it. And still, for some reason, I don't hate you. I'm angry, yes, but hate requires space in my heart, and I've reclaimed that space for myself. I forgave you a little the day I stopped waiting for your apology, and a little more when I stopped hoping you'd become the person I needed you to be. And now, I'm just living, not above you, not below you, just away from you. This isn't a door back in. It's a quiet truth you're free to sit with or not. I hope you're growing too. But more than anything, I hope you never do to anyone else what you did to me. Danielle. I sat on the floor reading it out loud once. The words caught somewhere near my throat, then softened. I folded the page and tucked it into the back of a drawer, the same one where I kept old birthday cards, expired coupons, and the bracelet she made me when we were kids. I didn't plan to mail it, it wasn't for her. It was for me. Because sometimes the power in a letter isn't in whether it's sent, it's in the fact that it was finally written. Later that afternoon, I walked into the backyard and checked the soil. The rosemary had turned dry and brittle. The basil was still clinging to life. A few leaves at the base were curling in, but something about it made me smile. Survival doesn't always look beautiful. Sometimes it looks like staying rooted in bad weather. Like basil, like me. I trimmed the dead ends and whispered something stupid to the plant like, "You're doing great, buddy." Then I went back inside and made tea. I thought that would be the emotional climax of the week, writing that letter. But life, in its strange way, had one more nudge for me. That night, I logged into my old email to search for a lost password, and there it was. An unread message. From Tessa. Subject line, no response needed, just read. I hesitated, my hand hovered over the trackpad like it might shock me. And then I clicked. Danielle. I've been sitting with a lot of silence lately, and in that silence I've realized just how much noise I used to live in: denial, blame, distractions. I used those things to make myself feel better about what I did. But there's no excuse. You didn't deserve what I did. And I'm not going to ask for forgiveness. I'm just going to keep showing up through the checks, through the restitution, because that's what you asked for, that's what I never gave you before, proof. You were right to walk away, you were right to say no to reconciliation. I was toxic. And I'm working hard not to be. That's all. No reply expected. I just wanted you to know that I read every line of the statement you submitted to the court, and I believed every word of it. You told the truth, and I finally believe you deserved better. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark, the glow of the screen still lingering in my eyes. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just sat there fully still. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt something I hadn't dared feel in months. Peace. Not because everything was fixed, not because she was forgiven, but because I didn't need to carry the weight anymore. She was finally lifting her own part of it. And I was done holding both. The truth is, I had just begun to feel like the worst was behind me. After the letter, after her email, after those steady checks continued arriving like clockwork, small, silent acknowledgments that something had shifted. I wasn't holding my breath anymore, I was letting it go. But then the phone rang. It was a cold Thursday morning. I'd just finished rinsing the coffee pot when the number lit up my screen. Local unknown. Normally I wouldn't answer, but something made me reach for it anyway. This is Danielle. A pause, then a woman's voice, firm but polite. Ms. Mercer, this is Linda Gonzalez from the Department of Consumer Affairs. Do you have a moment to talk? My stomach dropped, every muscle in my back tensed. Yes, I said slowly. What's this regarding? It's about the identity theft case filed under your name. I understand that you chose not to press formal criminal charges against your sister, Tessa Mercer, but a separate fraud report was submitted by a financial institution that's triggered a broader investigation. I blinked, the room tilted just slightly. I wasn't aware of that. I understand, Linda continued, professional but not cold. But because you're listed as the primary victim in the original fraudulent loan, we'll need to confirm a few details for court documentation. It's procedural but necessary. Court. My pulse roared in my ears. I'd thought we were past all that. I'd made peace with her checks, her silence, even her email. But this dragged it all back up like a bucket from the bottom of a well. I answered her questions mechanically: date of the incident, amount stolen, timeline of discovery, emotional impact. My voice didn't shake, not once. But inside, I felt like I was watching myself from outside my own body. A woman on the phone, answering calmly about betrayal, financial trauma, the legal weight of family implosion. When she thanked me and hung up, I stood in the kitchen in total silence. The coffee had gone cold. Olive curled up on the windowsill, watching the breeze move the curtain. And me, I stood there, hand still on the counter, heart not knowing how to feel. It wasn't my doing. But it was still happening. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying that phone call in my mind over and over. What would this mean for her? Would she be arrested? Would this undo the progress she'd made? And the question I hated myself for even thinking: did she deserve it? I sat up at 2 a.m., wrapped in a blanket, sipping lukewarm tea and asking the air around me. What do you do when justice finally catches up, but it arrives long after you stop chasing it? I didn't know the answer, but I was about to hear hers. 2 days later, my phone rang again. Block number. I knew before I even picked up, I knew. Danielle, her voice came through, brittle and thin. Tessa, I said, nothing more. I assume you know. I stayed silent. I got the notice yesterday, she said, like it physically hurt to say it. It's real, I'm being charged, court is in 6 weeks. I didn't say I didn't do it, she already knew. They said the dealership reported it. After reviewing your file, guess it was a liability risk. She let out a bitter laugh. Even they don't want me now. I didn't speak, I couldn't find the right words, and maybe there weren't any. I'm not calling to beg, she continued. I know you didn't press charges, I know this isn't from you, but I wanted to say something before the world drags me across pavement. There was a pause, then in the smallest voice I've ever heard her use. I'm scared, Danny. For a second, just a flicker, I remembered her as a child, hiding behind me during thunderstorms, clutching my hand on the first day of school. But that girl was long gone. And I was no longer her shelter. I was scared too, I said finally. When the bank called, when my accounts froze, when I thought I'd lose my apartment, you didn't care about that. I didn't know. No, I cut her off gently. You didn't ask, you didn't want to know. She exhaled, shaky. I know, and I'm sorry. I know I keep saying that and it probably means nothing now, but I am. Another long pause, the kind that weighs more than words. I'm going to take the deal, she whispered. No lies, no dodging, I'll accept whatever they give me, community service, record, all of it. I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see. That matters, I said. If you really mean it, that matters. She sniffled. Do you think I deserve it? I sat back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. You deserve to take responsibility, I said. That's not punishment, that's growth. She didn't reply right away, then softly, that's fair. Neither of us said goodbye. The line just went quiet. And for once that quiet felt honest. The next morning I drove to the mountains. A solo trip I'd planned weeks ago, long before the call. Just me, a rented cabin, a worn-out paperback novel, and no reception. I hiked during the day, let the cold wind bite at my cheeks, stood at the edge of cliffs with trees unfolding beneath me like a breathing map. And each night I sat by the fire in silence. No emails, no courtrooms, no Tessa. Just air, flame, solitude. The second night I stood out on the porch under a canopy of stars, black sky dotted with white. And I whispered, not to her, not to the sky, but to myself. I'm okay. 3 words. But they felt like a lifetime. Because I finally meant them. Not I'm surviving. Not I'm enduring. Just I'm okay. Not because she made it right, but because I let go. Because justice had taken over. Because I was no longer the one doing the heavy lifting. And I didn't need her apology anymore. Not as armor. Not as closure. Not even as proof. I had built a life that didn't require her absence or her presence. It was mine. Spring came early. The frost that usually lingered well into March disappeared by the second week of February. Buds bloomed too fast, birds returned too soon, and for once I didn't mind nature breaking its own rules. I liked the idea of healing ahead of schedule. I'd return from the mountains with new clarity, not dramatic, not earth-shattering, just a quiet sort of steadiness. I cooked more, worked fewer hours, took Olive for walks in a little cloth harness even though she hated it and flopped like a pancake the second we stepped outside. And I didn't think about Tessa every day anymore. I still received the checks, still filed them away without ceremony, still felt a flicker of recognition when her name showed up on the line marked sender. But that was it, a flicker, not a flame. Then one afternoon in March, I opened my mailbox and found a small envelope. Cream-colored. Handwritten. No return address. I stood in my front hallway staring at it, keys still in one hand, groceries on the floor beside me. My first instinct was to toss it in the trash. My second was to tear it open with shaking hands. But I did neither. Instead, I placed it on the kitchen counter unopened, sat down, made tea, pet Olive, watered the basil. Only hours later, when the house was dark and my nerves had calmed, did I finally sit at the table and open it. It was a letter. From her. No greetings, no date, just her handwriting, neater than I remembered, more controlled. Danielle, I'm writing this because I need to put something down that doesn't disappear with a voicemail or a deleted message. Something that stays. I don't know if you'll read this, I don't know if you'll believe it, but I want you to have it. I used to think getting caught was the worst thing that could happen to me, but now I know it was the only thing that could have saved me from myself. I've spent the last month working at a shelter downtown as part of my service requirement. I clean bathrooms, I prep meals, I hand out towels. It's nothing special, nothing anyone claps for, but it's real. And for once, I'm doing something that isn't just about me. I think of you every time I see a woman walk in who looks tired, the kind of tired that lives in the bones. That's what I did to you. You didn't just lose money, you lost peace. And I don't know if I'll ever earn your forgiveness, but I'm not asking for it anymore. I'm just trying to keep showing up, quietly, consistently. You don't owe me anything. But I owed you this. Tessa. That was it. No signature flourish, no request to talk. Just an honest letter, not dramatic, not manipulative, a door cracked open, but not held wide. And still I didn't write back. I folded the letter, slid it into the drawer in the hallway, the same one that held the first note I wrote to her but never sent. The same one that held our old photos, our childhood bracelet, and every version of the truth we never said out loud. Some stories don't need sequels. Some doors stay closed. Not because of anger, but because peace has no interest in reopening wounds just to see if they've scarred over. That night I lit a single candle. Not for ritual, not for drama. Just because I liked the scent, sandalwood and sage. I curled up on the couch with Olive, who insisted on kneading my arm like it owed her money, and I whispered something into the quiet. I forgive you. No one heard me. And that was the point. Because forgiveness is for the forgiver, not the forgiven. It doesn't mean we're friends again, it doesn't mean I trust you, it doesn't mean you get to come back. It means I don't want to carry your choices in my chest anymore. It means I want space for other things. Like sunlight. Like laughter. Like me. A week later, Paula brought over lemon bars and asked if I wanted to help her repaint her porch swing. I said yes. We spent 3 hours covered in flecks of turquoise paint, arguing about whether or not cats could sense ghosts. Later, we sat on that half-dry swing with iced tea in hand and no pressure to fill the silence. She didn't ask about my sister. And for the first time, I realized no one did anymore. Not because they didn't care, but because they saw that I had moved on. And they followed my lead. Tessa still existed, of course, somewhere out there, living in a new apartment, working, restoring. But she wasn't part of the current chapter. She was a plotline I had resolved, a character I no longer needed to revise. Her name didn't haunt me anymore. It just lived beside the other memories. Not buried, not clinging, just place shelved. Like a book I once loved then outgrew. And I didn't need to reread it. One morning, I opened the windows and found the basil blooming again, small, soft leaves pushing up like little hands reaching for warmth. And I realized I hadn't cried in weeks. Not for her. Not for me. Not even in secret. I was still healing, yes. But I was no longer hurting. And that, I decided, was what true peace felt like. Not forgetting. Not pretending. Just choosing not to reopen the door. Because the life on this side, the life I built with my own two hands, was finally more beautiful than the one I lost. A year to the day. That's how much time had passed since the call from the bank that cracked everything open. 12 months of unraveling and rebuilding. Of silence, letters, court dates, lemon bars, kittens, porch swings, and forgiveness with no return address. I marked the day not with grief but with an ordinary ritual, opening the storage box at the back of my bedroom closet. It was the box I'd shoved there months ago, the one filled with keepsakes I wasn't ready to face when everything was still bleeding. I carried it out to the living room, sat cross-legged on the floor, and opened the lid. Inside was our history. The photo on top was from a summer trip to Myrtle Beach. I must have been 14. Tessa was 11. We were sunburned and smiling, two wide arms tangled around each other like vines. There was salt in our hair. We were holding snow cones. Her mouth was stained blue. I laughed softly. Not bitterly. Not nostalgically. Just softly. Because that version of us existed once. And she deserved to be remembered. Even if the later version broke something I had to rebuild myself. I set the photo aside. Next came the concert tickets, Taylor Swift in Raleigh junior year of college. Tessa had bought them as a birthday surprise. I remembered her singing You Belong With Me off-key in my ear the whole night. Sticky floors, bad nachos, joy. Then a crumpled note she left me once, taped to my bathroom mirror after I bombed a job interview. You're gonna rule the world, just give it a minute. I had forgotten about that one. I folded it carefully and tucked it into a small envelope marked keep. Because not everything from her was a lie. Some things were real. Some moments mattered. And letting her go didn't mean erasing her. It meant choosing what stayed. Later that day, I walked down to the community garden near the edge of the park. Paula had suggested I get a plot months ago, and I finally decided to take her advice. I picked a corner space, dug my hands into the earth. It felt good to start something new again from nothing. I planted cherry tomatoes, kale, and more basil, always basil. When I got home, I opened my laptop and created a folder on my desktop called Letters Never Sent. Inside it, I saved all the notes I'd written to Tessa, the angry ones, the forgiving ones, the ones I never dared speak aloud. I renamed the folder once before I shut the laptop. What I let go. The next morning, I found Olive sitting at the window, watching the world like she owned it. I scratched behind her ears, brewed some tea, and sat on the porch in my old hoodie and socks that didn't match. And I realized I felt whole. Not because everything had worked out. Not because Tessa had fixed anything. But because I no longer needed her to. I didn't need the family to understand. Didn't need my parents to apologize. Didn't need closure handed to me like a gift. I had built it. Planted it. Watered it. Named it my own. A few weeks later, I ran into someone at the grocery store, an old mutual friend who hadn't seen me since the wedding fallout. They paused in the cereal aisle looking surprised. Hey, Danielle, right? I nodded, hi. They glanced at their cart, then back at me. How's your sister? I smiled politely, I don't know. Oh, they said you two aren't. I shook my head, we were, but not anymore. They nodded slowly, not sure what to say. And I didn't fill the silence. Because that was enough. I wasn't bitter, I wasn't wounded. I just wasn't tied to her anymore. And that was the cleanest kind of truth. On the 1-year anniversary of her arrest, I baked a small chocolate cake, not to celebrate her downfall, but to mark my own resilience. I lit a single candle. Olive watched from the table like a judge. I whispered a single word before blowing it out. Me. Not us. Not forgiveness. Not closure. Just me. Because that's who I came home to. That's who I rebuilt for. That's who I saved. Myself. In the end, I kept the things that mattered. The bracelet with the crooked beads spelling Danny 3 Tess. The childhood photos where we were still innocent. The good memories that weren't poisoned by what came after. And I let go of the rest. The blame. The bitterness. The need to be understood. The idea that justice had to be loud to be real. Healing didn't change what happened. It changed how I lived after. It gave me back my voice. My rhythm. My roots. And for the first time in a long, long time, I was finally at peace with what stayed. And proud of what I let go.